In the small town of Millwood, New Year's Eve was always a grand celebration in the town square. This year, as the clock struck midnight, a shadowy figure appeared on the stage. It was tall and cloaked, its features obscured in darkness. No one knew who it was or how it got there. Whispers spread through the crowd as the figure spoke in a voice that sent shivers down everyone's spines. It spoke of an ancient curse that would be unleashed when the clock struck midnight, a curse that would bring darkness and despair to the town. As the countdown reached its final moments, the figure's voice grew louder, its words more ominous. When the clock struck midnight, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind an eerie silence that hung over the square. The townspeople were left bewildered and afraid. They wondered if the figure's words were a warning or a threat. Some dismissed it as a prank, but others couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had been unleashed that night. As the days passed, strange things began to happen in Millwood. People reported seeing shadowy figures in the alleys and hearing whispers in the night. The once vibrant town began to feel like a place of darkness and fear, haunted by the unseen presence that had visited them on New Year's Eve. Emily's New Year's resolution was to be more adventurous, but she never expected it to lead her to an abandoned amusement park. On New Year's Day, she received a mysterious package containing a map to the park. Curiosity got the better of her, and she ventured into the eerie place. As she explored the park, she felt a strange presence watching her from the shadows. Whispers echoed through the empty rides, and the air felt heavy with unseen eyes. When she tried to leave, the park seemed to shift around her, the pathways changing direction, trapping her in a maze of darkness. As the hours passed, Emily grew more and more desperate to escape. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. Just as she thought she was doomed to wander the park forever, she stumbled upon a hidden exit. Gasping for breath, she emerged into the sunlight, vowing never to return to the haunted amusement park. But as she looked back at the park, she couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent still lurked within its abandoned rides and empty halls. Jake's New Year's Eve party at his cabin in the woods was supposed to be a night of celebration. As the clock struck midnight, the guests began to disappear one by one. Jake searched the cabin frantically, but each room he entered was empty, except for the lingering echoes of laughter. With growing unease, Jake realized he was alone in the silent cabin. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, marking the passing minutes of the new year. He called out for his friends, but there was no response. As the hours passed, Jake's panic turned to dread. He couldn't explain the eerie silence that had settled over the cabin or the inexplicable disappearance of his guests. When dawn broke, he ventured outside, hoping to find some sign of what had happened. But the woods were empty and still, as if nothing had ever disturbed their tranquility. Jake returned to the cabin, haunted by the memory of the vanished party and the unanswered questions that lingered in the air. Mark received an antique mirror as a New Year's gift. At first, it seemed like a beautiful addition to his home. But as he stared into it one evening, he noticed something strange. A message appeared in the fog on the mirror's surface: "Beware the reflection." Brushing it off as a prank, Mark ignored the message. But that night, as he passed by the mirror, he caught a glimpse of movement in its reflection. Startled, he turned to look, but there was nothing there. As days passed, the messages on the mirror grew more sinister. Sometimes they warned him of dangers, other times they seemed to mock him. Then one night, Mark saw his reflection move on its own, showing a twisted smile that wasn't his own. Terrified, Mark tried to cover the mirror, but the messages continued to appear. He couldn't escape the feeling that the mirror was watching him, waiting for something. And as New Year's Eve approached, the messages became more urgent, as if the mirror was trying to warn him of something terrible that was about to happen. Sarah was excited to spend New Year's Eve at her grandparents' old farmhouse. As the clock struck midnight, she heard footsteps in the attic. Thinking it was her grandfather, she went to investigate. To her horror, she found the attic empty, but the footsteps continued, growing louder and closer with each step she took. Frightened, Sarah hurried downstairs, hoping to find her grandparents or someone else awake. But as she reached the ground floor, the footsteps followed, echoing through the house. She called out, but there was no response. The house felt colder, and Sarah's breath formed misty clouds in the air. She realized she was alone in the old farmhouse, with the sound of the footsteps getting closer. Desperate, she tried to leave, but the front door wouldn't budge. As the footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, Sarah closed her eyes, hoping it was all just a bad dream. But when she opened them, she was still in the house, and the footsteps had stopped. In the eerie silence that followed, Sarah wondered if she had imagined it all or if something sinister lurked in the shadows of the old farmhouse.